Did you know? Research from AARP shows that over 60% of parents over 60 feel their children no longer respect them like they once did. Maybe you felt it too. The way your kids used to value your advice, but now they dismiss your words. The way they once sought your guidance, but now they barely listen. And the worst part? Sometimes they make you feel like you don't matter, you're not alone. And here's the truth. Respect isn't something you demand, it's something you inspire. In this video, I'll share 6 simple yet powerful ways to regain your children's respect, without arguments, without resentment. So if you've ever felt overlooked, comment "respect" below. You're not alone. Now, let's start with the most crucial step. Stop seeking their approval. 1. Stop seeking your children's approval. Have you ever found yourself going out of your way just to make your children happy, only to feel unappreciated in return? Maybe you drop everything to accommodate their schedule. Maybe you bite your tongue instead of sharing your true thoughts. Or maybe you give and give, hoping they'll finally recognize your sacrifices. But here's the hard truth. The more you chase their approval, the less they respect you. Why? Because when you constantly prioritize their needs over your own, you're teaching them something, that your feelings come second. And once they start believing that, they stop valuing your voice. Take Linda, for example. She's a mother of 3 grown kids. In her younger years, she was strong, independent, and confident. But as she got older, she started putting her children first in every situation. She rearranged her plans to fit theirs. She avoided expressing her real opinions. She even tolerated disrespect just to keep the peace. And what happened? Her children started seeing her as a doormat. They dismissed her words, ignored her advice, and expected her to always say yes. She thought she was keeping the family together, but in reality, she was losing their respect. So, what can you do? Start respecting yourself first. Set boundaries. Say no when you need to. Speak your mind, even if they don't like what you have to say. Because when you stop acting like you need their approval, something shifts. They start seeing you differently. They recognize your strength. And over time, the respect you've been longing for comes back. Not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. Have you ever felt like you're constantly giving without appreciation? Comment "yes" below if this resonates with you. Now that you've learned how seeking approval can backfire, let's talk about another mistake that can push your children even further away: arguing. 2. Don't argue. Lead with calmness. But here's something that might surprise you. Arguing doesn't earn respect. It actually does the opposite. Think about it. When was the last time you convinced someone to respect you by fighting with them? It doesn't work that way. When you argue, you're showing them that they have power over you, that their words can control your emotions. But real power, real respect, that comes from how you respond. Let me tell you about David. He was a retired teacher, respected in the classroom but ignored at home. His grown children would interrupt him, brush off his advice, and sometimes even laugh at his opinions. At first, he tried to fight back, raising his voice and demanding respect. But the more he fought, the worse things got. Then, one day, David tried something different. Instead of arguing, he stayed calm. He didn't beg them to listen. He didn't try to prove himself. He simply spoke with confidence and self-respect. When his son interrupted him, he paused and said, "I'll continue when you're ready to listen." When his daughter dismissed his advice, he calmly replied, "You don't have to agree with me, but I expect to be treated with respect." And something incredible happened. Over time, his children started paying attention. They realized their father wasn't desperate for their approval. He was a strong, independent man who carried himself with dignity. So, the next time your children try to push your buttons, don't engage in the fight. Stay calm. Keep your dignity. Because when you stop reacting with frustration, they will start seeing you in a different light. Have you ever noticed that arguing doesn't work? Comment CALM below if you agree. Now let's talk about another mistake many parents unknowingly make: depending too much on their children for emotional fulfillment. 3. Stop being emotionally dependent on your children. One of the hardest lessons to learn as a parent is this: your children should not be your only source of emotional fulfillment. You love them deeply. You want them to love and respect you in return. But the moment they sense that you need their attention, their approval, or their validation, the dynamic shifts. Instead of feeling connected, they feel pressured. Instead of feeling grateful, they feel burdened. And when that happens, they pull away. It's not because they don't care. It's because people naturally respect those who are emotionally independent. Take Eleanor, for example. She was a devoted mother who spent decades putting her children first. As they grew older and got busy with their own lives, she found herself waiting by the phone hoping they'd call. When they didn't, she called them instead. Often. She reminded them how much she missed them. She asked why they didn't visit more. She made them feel guilty without even realizing it. And what happened? They pulled away even further. They started seeing her calls as an obligation instead of something to look forward to. Then one day, Eleanor made a change. She stopped waiting. She stopped calling first. Instead, she started focusing on herself, picking up new hobbies, reconnecting with old friends, even joining a local community group. And something unexpected happened. Her children started calling more. They became curious about her life. They respected her time. They wanted to be part of what she was building. That's the secret. When you show your children that your happiness doesn't depend on them, they respect you more. So ask yourself, do your children see you as someone who has a full, meaningful life, or someone who's waiting for their attention? If this resonates with you, comment "independent" below. Now let's talk about something just as important: setting clear boundaries and enforcing them. Set clear boundaries and enforce them. Have you ever let something slide? Maybe your child spoke to you disrespectfully, ignored your opinion, or treated your time as if it didn't matter because you didn't want to cause conflict. You tell yourself, it's not worth the fight. But here's the problem. The more you tolerate disrespect, the more it becomes the norm. Children, no matter their age, learn how to treat you based on what you allow. If you let them interrupt you, dismiss you, or take advantage of your kindness, they will keep doing it. Not because they're bad people, but because you haven't set the expectation that you deserve better. Take Robert, for example. He was a successful businessman, used to commanding respect in the office. But at home, his adult children spoke over him, criticized his choices, and dismissed his concerns. At first, he laughed it off. He told himself, they don't mean any harm. But over time, he realized that every time he stayed silent, he was teaching them that their behavior was acceptable. So Robert made a change. One evening, when his son interrupted him, he calmly said, "I'll finish my thought when you're ready to listen." When his daughter dismissed his opinion, he replied, "You don't have to agree with me, but I do expect to be treated with respect." And when they continued to push his boundaries, he made it clear. If they couldn't treat him with basic respect, he wouldn't be spending as much time with them. At first, they resisted, but over time, they realized he wasn't backing down. They saw that he valued himself enough to demand respect. And because of that, they started giving it to him. So ask yourself, are you allowing your children to treat you in ways that you don't deserve? If this resonates with you, comment "boundary" below. Now let's move on to something just as important: why you should stop giving when you're not being appreciated. Stop giving without appreciation. One of the quickest ways to lose respect is to keep giving to people who don't appreciate it. And as parents, we do this more often than we realize. We give our time, we give our energy, we give our support, even when it's not acknowledged, even when it's taken for granted. But here's the truth. When you give to someone who doesn't appreciate it, you don't build love. You don't build respect. You build entitlement. They stop seeing your kindness as a gift and start seeing it as something they deserve. And the moment you stop, they don't feel grateful. They feel inconvenienced, Let me tell you about George. George was a father who had always been generous with his children. He helped them financially whenever they needed it. He dropped everything to assist them. He even rearranged his life to accommodate their needs. And in return, his children expected more. They rarely said thank you. They complained when he didn't help fast enough. And the worst part, when he finally needed their help, they were too busy. Then one day, George made a change. He stopped overextending himself. He stopped offering help before it was even asked. And most importantly, he started saying no when he needed to. At first, his children were frustrated. They didn't understand why he wasn't bending over backward for them anymore. But over time, something shifted. They started valuing his time. They started appreciating his efforts, because suddenly they realized that his generosity wasn't unlimited. It was a choice. So ask yourself, are you giving more than you should? Because when you teach people that your generosity depends on respect, they will start treating it that way. If this resonates with you, comment value below. Now let's talk about the final and most powerful step, building a life outside of your children. 6. Build a life outside of your children. One of the most powerful ways to regain your children's respect is to show them that your happiness doesn't depend on them. As parents, it's natural to devote yourself to your children, to put their needs first, to make them the center of your world. But over time, that dynamic shifts. If you've spent your entire life prioritizing them, they may start seeing you as someone who has nothing else going on. And people, even your own children, respect those who have purpose, independence, and a full life of their own. Take Helen, for example. After her husband passed away, she poured everything into her children's lives. She checked in constantly. She gave them advice they didn't ask for. She expected them to fill the space that her husband once did. But instead of drawing them closer, it pushed them away. They visited less. Their calls became shorter, and Helen felt more alone than ever. Then, one day, she made a choice. She stopped waiting for their attention. She joined a book club. She started traveling with friends. She volunteered at a local community center, and something incredible happened. Her children started reaching out more. They were curious about what she was doing. They admired her independence. They respected her, because when you show your children that you are living, not just existing, they will start seeing you in a completely different light. So ask yourself, do your children see you as someone who has a full, meaningful life? Or do they see you as someone just waiting for their attention? If you believe in living a fulfilling life beyond your children, comment life below. So what happens when you put all these steps into action? Let's bring everything together and look at the big picture. Respect isn't something you demand, it's something you inspire through the way you carry yourself every single day. If you've ever felt dismissed or unappreciated by your children, remember this: you have more control than you think. When you stop chasing their approval, they start seeing your value. When you lead with calmness instead of conflict, they start listening in a different way. When you create a life that brings you joy beyond them, they begin to respect you, not out of obligation, but out of admiration. You don't have to wait for them to change. You can take the first step. So, which of these shifts do you see yourself making first? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us reach more people just like you who are looking for guidance and encouragement. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.